The Joe Rogan Experience.
Again, I keep going back to that one point, which is it doesn't really matter what the facts are anymore. It does. As an example, today was, now I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit, but today was hearings up on the Hill. The Senate Armed Services Committee was holding hearings. So who did they have? They had Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. They had CENTCOM Commander General McKenzie, great guy. They had the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley. So they all, to the last one, said, yes, we were advising the president that our advice is to maintain a small troop presence, minimum of 2,500 troops, right, in Afghanistan. And our belief was not that it would collapse as quickly as it did, but that it would collapse if you took those advisors, those troops out, that it would collapse maybe by this fall. And yet you've got the president saying, I don't recall being told any of that. And that's okay now because and nobody's questioning it, right? Nobody's saying, well, hold on. No, how about some pushback? How about saying, what do you mean you don't recall? This is one of the most important decisions you've made or will be making. And you don't recall whether your senior top military advisors were telling you that in their advice, keep the troops in there for a period of time. And he's saying, I don't remember. And there's really no serious pushback. This whole hearing, if anybody wants to know what Washington, D.C. is like and how that city runs, I'd recommend maybe on Thursday watching some more of these hearings on the Afghanistan process because it's just, on one hand, it's very depressing. It's just a shit show. You've got the senators on the Armed Services Committee who have been there, who have been privy to all sorts of intelligence over the past few years, right? Now sitting in a hearing to understand what happened, what went wrong with the Afghan withdrawal. And they're all acting as if, they could be surprised by this. When these politicians have been sitting up at Capitol Hill, being briefed on this shit, having the opportunity to ask questions, doing all the things they should be doing. But now because it's all theater, now they get to sit in a hearing in front of some of the senior military commanders and act as if they're a little bit surprised by all of this. And, oh, my God, how did it happen? How can we prevent it from happening again? Senator Jeanne Shaheen actually asked that. I think it was of Milley saying, well, how do we prevent this from happening again? Are you fucking kidding me?
Happening again?
Yeah. That's your question?
Jesus Christ.
Anyway, it's I tell you what, it's been a fascinating period of time.
Let me ask you this. So the president has the ability to say whatever
I love being a libertarian, talking about like government overreach in the form of like vaccine mandates, and then having a fucking CIA guy give his take on Afghanistan. Libertarianism is such a perfect American libertarianism is so perfect. Like there is no better fucking soldier that represents like gross American overreach than a literal like self-titled CIA guy. Wonderful.
So if someone advises him to leave 2,500 troops, he has the ability to say, I don't think so. No troops.
Yes, he does. So he can take all that advice, and the military leaders are saying, look, we provided this advice.
Right.
It is. I think it does surprise people sometimes when they see the extent, and if they were watching these hearings and understanding the information flow about Afghanistan. Look, there was a lot of talk, right, and in the aftermath of this withdrawal clown show, that what happened, who was advising who, how did we miss certain pieces of intelligence, and there's a lot to figure out there. But the idea that the president would sit there in his office with all these senior advisors around, and they would say, "Sir, here are your options," because that's always basically what they're doing. And theoretically, they are supposed to be strong enough to argue their point as strongly as possible, right? They're not there to just go along. So they all come in. They say, "We think you should be, keeping troops in there," and the president then steps away. And now Milley, McKenzie, the others, they all said that Biden listened very, seriously to them, but there was a political decision here, right? That political decision was, we're getting the hell out. Now, the interesting thing is that Biden, he kind of wants to have it both ways, right? He wants to take credit for being brave and saying we're getting the hell out, right? But then he also wants to blame the previous administration for the reason why he had to be getting the hell out, right? So he wants.
But like it was the Trump administration's negotiations that Biden continued on. I don't know how. Like, I don't understand how people can lie about this shit. It's such a strange thing to lie about. It's like, why did the Trump administration facilitate the conditional release of 5,000 Afghan Taliban prisoners? Like, if it wasn't their conditional retreat negotiations, like what they just do that for fun? Because I feel like that's even worse. Why did they take out Baradar from the Pakistani prison? Like one of the highest levels in the Taliban command. They released him from the Pakistani prison he was in, and they flew him over to hang out with Mike Pompeo. Like, why did they do that? Well, they did that because they were negotiating a conditional retreat and eventual evacuation of all U.S. military members from Afghan soil. That's the reason why they did that. And that's precisely what Joe Biden followed on.
To blame the Doha agreement that Trump signed in February.
So by that guy's dumbass logic, Trump should get the credit for being brave and pulling out of Afghanistan, but no responsibility for how his negotiations fucked it up. Yeah.
February of 2020.
And what was that?
Well, that was it when the Trump administration made a deal with the Taliban. And in February of 2020.
Like, not only did they do a deal with the Taliban, they did a deal with the Taliban where the Taliban was like, we don't want the Afghan government to have a say in this. And they were just like, okay, fuck the Afghan government. So the Trump administration is 100% responsible for the Afghan government, which was a puppet state that we built regardless. And it was a bullshit, very corrupt puppet state anyway. But the Trump administration's negotiations are directly responsible for the Afghan government not being able to hold off the Taliban anyway, because that wasn't ever a part of the deal. That was not what was going to happen. Don't let anybody lie to you and tell you otherwise.
And basically it had conditions within that. And General Milley and McKenzie talked about those conditions, I think, today, and they're in the hearings, actually. There were 7 conditions placed on the Taliban for this agreement to go forward. And there was a May withdrawal date. Now, the previous administration, people don't want to hear this shit, right? Because they're so entrenched in their own camp, right? So people who are on the hard left, they're not going to want to hear the fact that the Doha agreement was based on conditions, right? But the most senior military commander,
the hard left,
today reaffirmed that, yes, there were 7 conditions for that agreement to follow through, for us to follow through. We had 8 conditions for the U.S. And now, during the course of the discussions and the negotiations, and this whole agreement was based on a power sharing. The idea was we want to create an opportunity for the Taliban and the Afghan government. We want them all to come together and create a power sharing agreement. Well, you know, on one hand, you could argue and say that's never going to happen.
Sounds crazy.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. But that's where they were. And you could also argue, and again, because people are so entrenched, no one's want to give any credit to whether they want to give credit to Biden or they want to give credit to Trump or any Republican president or Democrat president. You know, the Trump administration did kind of broker the hard, heavy lift of saying we're getting the hell out, right? There had been talk around the edges in previous administrations about, well, how long would it be there, right? But the Trump administration did finally actually say, fuck it, let's get a negotiation, let's go, and let's set a timeline to get the fuck out after 20 years. Right or wrong. So they put that on the table. They set the table for that, you know, hardline withdrawal. But the Taliban never met those conditions. The only thing they did was not attack U.S. troops directly. But as Milley and McKenzie said today, they never met any of the other conditions. So it had been explained to the Taliban that if that was the case and you don't meet these conditions, we're not going to leave in May. We're going to just keep pushing the withdrawal date further to the right.
So why was the decision made to withdraw then?
Well,
Biden did not follow the Trump administration.
Look, in part, I think because I think everybody got behind the idea that we can't stay there forever. Because I think everybody,
Dude, this guy's boring as fuck, dude. I bet that he didn't even fucking participate in like drug trafficking
money to pay for friends' meals
or anything, you know, that the CIA does. That fucking pencil pushing, paper pushing Andy over here. The American government, they did this, they did that. Like, shut the fuck up, bitch.
31 months sub 23
Straight up
months street
boring,
lobby,
dude. Fucking boring. I don't even want to watch this video.